Well, hello everybody. This is Bug Eater 64, and we got a new airplane to try. This is actually freeware. Really cool, old school. It's the Grumman Goose, and this actually has been ported. It's an old aircraft. It's been ported from over to Microsoft Flight Simulator from the old FSX. But they've really done a nice job on it. It is a early release version. So once we get inside the aircraft, I'll talk a little bit more about it. But we're going to fly this today, and we're going to be flying from KWJF in Central California, and I'm going to do a flight over to Catalina Island. This amphibious bird has got a great history. It's been flying around since the 1930s, and it's been used by multiple countries. Uh, and I actually got to fly in one of these birds many decades ago in Southern California on a flight to Catalina. So I'm going to revisit that flight today in this aircraft. Now, there's no autopilot. There's certain things that don't work in this. Like I said, it's an early access release, but the group that is working on this, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them later. But yeah, it's freeware. It's wonderful. And it's got some quirks, but it's fun to fly. So let's go do some of that flying, and we'll see you inside.
Yeah, and this is the first release from Wookiee's Hangar, the Grumman Goose G21 Alpha Redo number 2. So it's for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Excellent. So we're going to give it a shot here and let's get going here. Starting off at General William J. Fox Airfield, KWJF. And this is the Grumman. I just think it's a great old airplane. Radial engines. It doesn't have maybe the finesse as far as the graphics as maybe a Coronado or something like that. But you know what? I like it. I really do. Um, and this is early access, and the plane just looks good. So we'll get inside here and see about getting things started up. All right, so here we are inside, and we're going to start doing some things. This is my first real flight in this airplane, so we can learn together. Now, I have put a number of controls and switches on my Warthog HOTAS because it just makes it easier, and doing it that way really safe. Now, this aircraft also works quite well in VR. I've watched a couple YouTubers that have done that, and it looked very good. All right, so the bar that you saw swinging up there just before getting back here is our prop RPM handle. So we'll get rid of this. All our electrical panel switches are here, like the main battery. And our lights, avionics, all that. That's all right here. And that bar sticking out that the co-pilot's controls are is actually hiding one of the buttons. It's hard to see. All right, so I've actually got these. These are the fuel for left and right, and they're on right now. Shouldn't have been that way. But I'm still working on some of the switches, so that's why, you know, we'll get them down and get going here. All right, and fuel mixtures to maximum rich, and then that is our magnetos, and I've got them set up on switches on my Warthog, and it's still kind of a little bit quirky, but it's easier than using my mouse. So we'll get it all set up here. Have a little patience with this old guy. I'm like the aircraft. I'm old. And while you're waiting me to get things right, you can look at Marilyn Monroe's picture up there in the upper right-hand corner. Now, it's interesting to get this started. You get the throttles just about full, and I've got the engine started using my engine start on the Warthog. So that one started up fine. Now you see the radio stack there, that does not work at this time. And that's why you don't have any autopilot. And try to get this engine started. And it's not starting. Okay. I think I've got everything set up. Let's take a look here. We're going to bring the right engine that's running now, we're going to bring it down to kind of an idle. The thing is, if you get below 1500 RPM for the throttle, the engines will die. So that makes it a little finicky. Let's try this again. Okay, I've missed something. We'll take a look here. Yeah, and it's got to be, there we go. All right. And the reason I've got it, all right. Yeah, she started up that time. These magnetos are set correctly to both. And anyway, to start the engines, normally, if you use the switches in the upper panel to do it, you have to use the wheel on your mouse. And it can be a little bit finicky and a little bit problematic if trying to do it that way. For some people like me. So, anyway, right now we've got the engines are idling just below 2000. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of our lights on. We won't need the de-ice today. Got our pitot. And this is where you can look down and you can see that one under there that you just can't get to. Underneath that bar. So everything's running good. Let's get our ATIS and then we'll get our clearance for taxi.
Oscar 1600 Zulu, wind 257 at 5. Visibility 10. Sky condition, few clouds at 600
While we listen to that, I'll have a little sip or two of coffee.
Few clouds at 12,000 feet. Temperature -1. Dew point 10. Altimeter 30.18. and say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have Oscar.
Very good. So now let's get a hold of ground and get our permission to taxi.
64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray with Oscar request taxi to the active departing straight out.
Repeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray taxi to and hold short of runway 6 via taxiway Alpha. Contact tower on 118.525 when ready.
Taxi to and hold short runway 6 via taxiway Alpha Repeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray.
Alright, so let's see about moving. Okay. This shows one of the bugs that does happen periodically. Like I said, it's early access aircraft, so I can deal with these. It doesn't affect the flying, and she's fun to fly. She's heavy on the controls. She does, you know, she's not a speed demon, and she's not a fighter when it comes to turning. She moves like a much bigger airplane than she is. But right now, the rear wheel is locked, and that's why we can't move. And I'll show you that in just a second. Drops to full RPM. And see, and she's not moving. And you see that turned all the way? It's locked there, and that's why we can't move. So we've got to work with it, kind of wiggle it a bit, and the way to avoid that is to move, before you try turning, you have to start moving straight ahead. Or at least that's been my experience. But once we get moving, she's fine. So we're going to taxi down to, and hold short of runway 6. So, beautiful day in Central California. So we got to get to about, when we take off, we've got to fly at an altitude of about 8,500 to 9,000 feet to get over the mountains, and then we can descend into the Los Angeles Basin area and head over to Catalina. Alright, so let's get up here to the whole short line, get her configured for takeoff. Hello, tower. Flaps and takeoff position.
64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray at runway 6 ready for takeoff, departing straight out.
Repeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray cleared for takeoff, runway 6 straight out, departure approved.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 6 Repeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray.
Alright, we're all set. Ease ourselves forward and get on the runway so we can get out of here. stop. Make sure that tail wheel is in a good position. Let's get the engine revved up and get going. Gear coming up. Okay, so basically, one thing that she does fairly well is once you get her trimmed up, she's very easy to handle, easy to fly. You know, she's fairly slow in the turns, heavy on the yoke, but yeah, it's not bad. We're going to be making our turn to the right to head for the mountains. Climb over them and into the Los Angeles Basin area.
Repeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray, you are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Very good.
Fox Tower Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray frequency change. Joshua approach Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray is type 4 miles northwest of Kilo Lima Alpha Tango. Request flight following. Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray Joshua approach. Squawk 070 tree. Squawk 070 tree Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray. Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray radar contact 3 miles northwest of Kilo Lima Alpha Tango 5,500 feet. Altimeter tree 0.18. Copy Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray. Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray contact Joshua approach on 124.55. 124.55 Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray. Joshua approach Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray 6,300 feet. Buggeater 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray Joshua approach continue as planned. Altimeter tree 0.18.
Okay, this is where I really need a real co-pilot because I've been so busy multitasking with radios and monitoring engines and so on. I have not put my flaps up yet, so we're going to have to get to that pretty darn quick. That's why we're flying so slow. This old girl can get up and go when she wants to. You actually have to watch that a little bit. And looking at our how many gallons we have, our fuel flow. We're going to pull back on the prop RPM. Get the flaps up, which should have been done about 3,000 feet ago. Anyway, and you'll see the speed climb pretty easily. Mondale area. Not exciting aircraft, but they're fun to fly and just reliable. I mean, in the real world, the engines, radial engines were great, for reliability and so on. So, of course, modern engines have got an awful lot going for them. But I'm okay, I admit it. I like old radial engine aircraft. And we're climbing nicely. We're going to get probably about right at 10,000 feet, just to make sure we have plenty of clearance getting over the mountain. You can tell how smooth it is. It's an easy aircraft to hand fly once you've got it trimmed. The trim on this does get a little bit, it kind of changes a bit. And so. But once you get her trimmed up, she's fine. So let's get over these mountains and get out to Catalina. And enjoy a little musica as we go. And here we are, Catalina Island. I made many a trip over to Catalina, and usually in a sailboat. But one of my favorite places in Southern California. Spent a good number of my growing up years and my first career years in Southern California. Only got to make one trip by air over to Catalina on one of these very fine Grumman aircraft. Grumman. So the airfield, the airport, is directly ahead of us. But before we do that, I'm going to be making a left turn. We're going to go do a little, try to do a water landing around Avalon. Plus, I want to see how well that's rendered in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we're going to take a look. So we'll go ahead and get the wing floats down. It looks like we only got one down right now. Alright, so we can fix that. We have the technology and the know-how. There we go. I thought if I put down that, use the central switch, they'd both come down, but they didn't. So, and making this water landing will highlight one of the severe issues in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, as far as the airplane, one of the hard things I had was trying to trim it for descent. It didn't want, once it was flying, it didn't want to go back down. So I don't know if it was my problem or if it was just something with the, you know, early access aircraft. But it's been great fun. And you can see Avalon out to the right there. The big building that you see there, that is the yacht club. I don't know if it's still an active yacht club or if it is just used as a museum now for Catalina Island and Avalon. altitude. Got our flaps configured for landing, which on the water is just the first position. Same as we use for takeoff. I'm going to come in closer and then I'm going to turn to the right to set her down on the water, because I don't know how long it's going to take to stop this aircraft. The problem with Microsoft Flight Simulator is that when you land on the water, there really doesn't appear to be any friction against the fuselage of the aircraft landing. So it does not stop like you would expect. That's the issue I found with a couple of their other water landing aircraft, which is something they really need to work on. So I'm going to turn to the right here and head down the coastline. If I landed right here, I'm not sure I could get it to stop before it ran into the little town of Avalon. There used to be a restaurant there where you could get the best buffalo burgers. Really excellent. Like I said, it's been many, many years since I was there. Alright, so getting her slowed down. Okay, touchdown. So nice smooth landing in the water. Engines are at about idle. Look at that. That's horrible. Absolutely no splash, nothing. That's very sad. Because once I have the engines close to idle, or as close as I can get without them shutting down, yeah, that's pretty bad. And she does not like to turn when she's on the water. I ended up I find that the best way is to have one engine on idle and then put the other engine pretty close to full power. It's almost like differential braking, but for water use. So we'll let them know we didn't land.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Boeing 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray is clear of the runway.
Alright, so I'm going to take off and go land at the airport. Temps and everything are good, so let's the line. See, the water should be spraying all over the place right now. And we're up. So we're going to turn to our left and head for the runway. Get the floats up. Yeah, those cable winches that winch those things up and down, they make a lot of noise. That's old school.
Traffic booking 64 Alpha Alpha Delta X-ray 8 miles southeast, 1,300 feet inbound to land runway 4.
And if you saw there, you notice that my flaps are still down in the takeoff position. And that's basically because I only had 8 miles to the runway. So, yeah, it's this old fart getting lazy. But here we are approaching the runway. So we'll see if we can land her safely. Full flaps now. Keep our airspeed about 80 knots or just over. Usually touch down about 60, but wind shears can be a real problem right off this runway because of the cliffs. So a little more speed, we'll be alright. This runway is at about 2,500 feet, so yeah. Alright, we're down. We'll yoke back to apply the brakes. The wheel is locked in. That is an issue. full power and she's not moving. Last time the wheel was turned to the full right. I wonder what it's turned to this time. The full left. Well, we'll wiggle it a little bit, see if we can. The landing was good. Let's see if we can get things to. There we go. I think we're going to do it this time. Come on, girl. You can do it. There we go. She finally released. All right. I don't know if you can lock and unlock that tail wheel or not yet in this version. We'll just have to wait and see. But I just think they, you know, as a freeware aircraft, my goodness, what a fine piece of machinery. Well done with people at Wookie's hangar. Just a lot of fun. Impressed to this early access and can't, wait for these different updates. Just a fine old girl. Alright, we're going to stop here, apply the parking brake. And shut down the engines. Drop RPM back to almost feather. And fuel off. So, safe and sound at Catalina Island. Not a bad little flight. From KWJF, it's just over 80 miles. So, thanks for coming.
All right, then. Here we are at Catalina. Once you land it on the water, though, it gets a little bit tricky. So you got to make sure you got lots of room because it doesn't slow down fast, which is kind of interesting because in the real world it does slow down pretty quick when it gets into the water. But needless to say, it's a lot of fun. Microsoft Flight Simulator still has a lot of work to do on their water landing aircraft in the fact that there's no indication once you're on the water. I had the bump when I first touched down, but there is no indication if you look outside the aircraft, or even if you're in the aircraft and you look at the float on the wing, There's no water splashing. There's no trail of water. It's just there, which is kind of disappointing. And hopefully that's one of the things they'll work on and get taken care of for the future. But all in all, I really like this little airplane. It's an old school airplane, radial engines, and yeah, I mean the Grumman has been flying since the 1930s. It was originally designed for and built for a bunch of rich dudes in Rhode Island back in the 30s because they wanted to get to and from their business areas and so on, and even some of their pleasure flights. This particular livery that I use today is the executive livery. So, you know, the more how do we say it, privileged in the world got to fly this airplane uh, as for commuting and so on like that. Militaries have used it around the world, and it's just a great old bird. And I love, as most people know that followed some of my flights, I love old aircraft. Um, and so this one it's just great fun, fabulous ideas. It's a work in progress. So, like I said, but once you get it trimmed up, hey, she flies just fine. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed the flight to Catalina. Avalon's looking pretty good, Avalon Bay Area. They've this landing area here doesn't look much at all like Catalina. The runway's in the right place and things like that, but the buildings on the strip are completely trash, garbage. But it's here. Hopefully, that's something because Catalina is a very important tourist location in Southern California, and it's one of the places you can get really, really good buffalo burgers because they actually have a herd of buffalo that uh, they raise and let range through Catalina Island. So it's a very cool place. A lot of history here, a lot of very interesting, even archaeological stuff. So hope you enjoyed the flight. Sure enjoyed bringing it to you. And until next time, this is Bug Eater 64. And as always, you know what I'm going to say? Safe flying.